Out of all the questions I get, what card should I buy right now is probably the most frequent one. So today I'm going to bring you guys 4 basketball cards under $150 that I'm looking to buy right now during the offseason to hopefully sell before the beginning of the next NBA season. Soccer cards are also an option, but right now I'm kind of in a wait and see mode, so you'll have to stay tuned for that type of video. The first card is a rookie card of a 23-year-old wing who's already been an all-star and averaged 24 points per game last year. And believe it or not, I think he's someone who's kind of been forgotten, which is crazy with those, the accolades, the resume that I just named. And that player is Brandon Ingram. When people ask me what moves card prices, I kind of try to simplify it down, and a lot of it is eyeballs. Where is people's attention? If a lot of people's attention is on a player, his prices are probably going up. If no one is thinking about a player, his prices are probably down. And right now, I just don't hear many people talking about Brandon Ingram. And a little bit of that is deserved, to be fair. The Pelicans did not do well at all this season. Brandon Ingram, he averaged 24 points per game, but he also averaged that the year before too. I think people were looking for a little bit more of improvement, but I'm still a believer in the Pelicans. The Zion factor is huge. You cannot underestimate that. And I think they'll turn it around this year. They have a new head coach. They have a lot of young, talented players. I think they're going to make some trades, maybe get rid of some of the dead weight on their roster, and I could see them doing big things this year. And even more than that, honestly, Brandon Ingram prices have just gotten to a place where I think your risk is relatively low. Take, for instance, this Optic Hollow PSA 9. This is first year Optic, total pop of only 250. You can get this in a PSA 9 for $75. That's what it sold for most recently. Is Brandon Ingram gonna become the legit superstar that maybe people were talking about last season? I don't know for sure, but once again, I feel with like a card like that, there's limited downside, and I would be very, very surprised if we don't see some hype going into next season. He's still one of the top young players in the NBA. Next up is Bradley Beal. He's been in a ton of trade rumors lately. Rumor has it he wants out of Washington, definitely understandable, and he's been rumored with the Warriors and even the Celtics, where he'd be reuniting with his longtime friend, Jason Tatum. Bradley Beal is a very good player, and I think people understand that, but I don't think people understand how crazy his production actually has been. The past 2 seasons, he's averaged over 30 points per game. Last season, bringing that up to 31.3. He was really like a couple buckets away from leading the whole league in scoring. He's just not on a very good Wizards squad, but I think he's the perfect complementary player if he had some more talent around him. And you're probably going to sense a trend in this video. This is kind of why I've gotten more and more excited about basketball cards, is because prices have come down so far in a lot of this stuff, especially with PSA being shut down and the cost of grading and a million different factors, which we won't get into in this video. I personally, just for myself, I feel like there's somewhat limited downside. I'm looking at his Prism rookie, PSA 9. It was over $300 not too long ago, just a couple months ago, and now it's selling for as cheap as $120. First year Prism, relatively low pop. Nothing is ever guaranteed, as I make it clear every single video, but I think it's more likely than not he does get that trade, and we should see at least a little bit of a pop with his card prices. Next up, the third player. We're going to do a little bit of guess the player type of thing like we did with the first one. 23-year-old guard who probably would have been an all-star if it wasn't so stacked at his position, but 11 points per game in his first year, 17 in his second, 21 in his third, and 25 again in his fourth. That is some really strong improvement, and he's gotten to a point where he's really producing. And that player is De'Aaron Fox. A lot of people may know him from Gary Vee. Gary Vee talked about De'Aaron Fox as a player he was really interested in.
I mean, I've really been here like...
Bro, I'd rip both my legs off and arms to be 25 on some real...
And that brings us to the Troyism of the day. Overreaction one direction, and then overreaction the other direction. When Gary Vee started talking about him, and even during a little bit of that last season, there was a ton of hype. His cards were run all the way up. And then it kind of seems like people are just like, oh man, remember De'Aaron Fox, how we were talking about him? And now his card prices have actually gotten pretty cheap. His Prism Silver PSA 9, relatively low pop because it's from an earlier year, has come down all the way up. It was above $300, and now it's only gonna run you about $130. Now, am I completely sold on De'Aaron Fox? Definitely not. To be fair, this list isn't my favorite basketball players. It's more just some ideas of people I think who could get hyped for this next season. But I do think he's a talented player, and I'm not sure the past couple years in Sacramento have been the best situation, or at the very least, not too many people have been watching him and seeing what he's really producing on a night in, night out basis. When you're outside of your Giannis's, Anthony Davis's, even Luka Doncic to an extent, the players are never going to be perfect. It's always going to be a little bit of a roll of the dice. Looking for guys who are relatively cheap, you're not going to be 100% sold. But if De'Aaron Fox can continue his progression, and who knows, maybe he even moves to a better team or someone else comes and joins him there in Sacramento, I think he still has a potential to be a really, really important hobby relevant player in the NBA. And before next season, for that price, I'm willing to take a little bit of a bet on that. And speaking of bets and rolls of the dice, the last one is a full bet roll of the dice, but I know people also ask me, they really like the super sleeper picks, so I like to throw one in as well. And a player, he was a rookie last year, actually ended up performing pretty good at the end of last season. And that player is RJ Hampton. In his last 9 games, he averaged 15 points per game, scoring over double digits in every single one. He started out on the Nuggets where he didn't get much of an opportunity to play, but then he was involved in that Aaron Gordon trade, and he really got an opportunity to shine with the Magic. One thing I've actually kind of come to like with rookies is if they're on a bad team, that's honestly a plus for me because they get a chance to be out there and put up numbers, and that's what gets people excited in the hobby, like seeing, okay, maybe this guy's legit, maybe he has real potential. And RJ Hampton has all the attributes that get people excited. He was the number 5 recruit out of high school, athletic, long, went to Australia, didn't really perform that well, kind of an alternative route, so maybe he's still adjusting and still kind of settling in, but it's obvious he has a lot of potential. And even more than that, I often like to look at card price history to predict what's going to happen to prices in the future. And he reminds me a lot of a guy who saw a pretty big run up before last season, and that is Kobe White. Same thing, once it got to the off season, people are looking for sleepers. They really start digging into stats. People start talking about it. Kobe White had a really strong end of his rookie season and got a ton of people excited going into this season that we just had. Obviously, that didn't work out. He didn't have the season maybe people expected, and his card prices absolutely crashed, that's for sure. So I'm not advocating you hold RJ Hampton stock long term and that I'm 100% sure. I don't pretend to be, I don't even know, Zach Lowe or some, technical analysis basketball person. If I could do that well enough, I would be in a GM's office. But once again, I'd be very surprised if we don't see that hype before next season. I think he'll be one of the people really pegged as a potential breakout candidate. But those are just 4 players I'm looking at. I'd be curious to know who you guys think as well. Comment it down below, and we're gonna keep the videos coming. See you next time.